Hello, and welcome to Change the Face of Yoga, teaching toddlers through golden oldies. I'm very excited to be talking to lots of yoga teachers who will explain their passion for teaching yoga to students with different ages, physical fitness levels, wellness levels, and different goals. They will explain the benefits of yoga for these students and will be including teacher tips and pose modifications. I am Stephanie Cunningham of Yoga Lightness, and I've been teaching over 50s for 10 years. So this area is my passion and the passion of many other yoga teachers that you will be listening to in this series. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get started. This is episode 39 of Changing the Face of Yoga, and I'm talking to Sheila Norman, who has focused her teaching on nourishing the parasympathetic nervous system. And she has studied and has several techniques to help people who need to calm and ease their nervous system. So let's listen. Hello, this is Changing the Face of Yoga. And we have a wonderful guest today. Her name is Stephanie Delfonso. Stephanie, and this is a bit intimidating to me, I admit it, was a popular radio DJ in Florida in the 80s and early 90s. And now she's delving into the healing arts. And we're going to talk about a lot of those things today, but particularly about meditation and mindfulness. And she's helping women primarily to deal with their anxiety through these many modalities that she understands and teaches so well. And she empowers women to move from anxiety, fear, stress, and despair to freedom, peace of mind, and joy in their lives. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie. I wasn't sure if you were having me on just because we both have the same name.
There's so few of us, though, that have that name.
I know.
My first question is, and it's something that is very confusing to me because it seems like people use these terms interchangeably, which is meditation and mindfulness. And maybe they should be used interchangeably, but I kind of have that they're a slightly different thing. Is there anything that you would like to say on that subject?
There's a lot of crossover and bleed through. And I think, my perspective is whatever way gets you to where you need to be. It doesn't matter what the label is that we put on it. Some people, if I talk to them about mindfulness, they're going to be more open to, let's try this approach instead of, meditation. Oh, I'm not into that. And then so it immediately shuts them down. It's really, for me, it's about getting you to that place that only you can get to. So it's going to be different for every person.
Let's explore that a little more. I took a mindfulness course, and it was very much connecting the body and the mind. You really went through a very, very detailed yoga nidra kind of thing where you even tried to feel the bones in your body and the muscles and then the skin. Whereas, at least the way that I do meditation, it is much more in your head, for me anyway, that you do the breathing and you kind of try to keep your mind quiet and stuff. Is that really a distinction worth saying anything about, or is that just the way I was taught?
Again, okay, so that was one way of practicing mindfulness. That's the beauty, Stephanie, of this beautiful journey of life where I have discovered that, I wear so many different hats. I've trained in so many different modalities because, one size doesn't fit all. So when you're taught that mindfulness is that connecting with the body as well as the mind, and that works for you, that is fantastic. And yet, if it doesn't work for someone else, then they think, I tried mindfulness and I failed. Where if instead I'd say, all right, how about if you pick up your cup of tea? And as you bring it up to near your nose, notice what it smells like. Oh, now notice what it feels like as you're bringing the cup up to your lips and feel the cup touching your lips. And now as you take a sip, notice as that tea comes into your mouth, that nice warm feeling, perhaps the flavor. Maybe you can experience it in a different way. So that's another way of experiencing mindfulness.
I like that example because I think almost everybody could do that. And so it would be a positive thing that they had kind of delved into mindfulness and come out with something that made sense to them and that they could do. So I like that. That's great.
I was at a conference in New York City put on by Wisdom 2.0, and the conference in New York was called Mindfulness in America. And Sharon Salzberg, like the go-to person for meditation, was there, as was John Kabat-Zinn, the father or grandfather of mindfulness. And I remember Sharon Salzberg saying about doing meditation, and somebody tries it this one way and, oh, it didn't work. I failed. And then they don't go back. So that's really what informs my whole approach to any modalities and why I have practiced so many is that I want to be able to help you. If meditation is going to be a block, then all right, I'll talk about mindfulness. And I apologize. You're going to hear my dog shaking in the background.
That's okay.
It
adds life to a podcast. I did read parts of your website, and one of the things that kind of caught my mind, because I've had so many people on the podcast that are bringing different pieces of knowledge and practice and modalities to helping people with anxiety. And what you were saying on your website was that there was much more anxiety present, especially in the United States, than we were aware of.
I would venture to say I would call it an epidemic. There was a lot of talk in the Wisdom 2.0 community. There's a lot of talk about how our anxiety is being so driven by our devices. And very interesting. I was so touched by this. I mean, first of all, it kept coming up. And, I'm going to date myself. 24 years ago, I remember the little neighbor boy down the street who had one of the first handheld video games. And he's off by himself, blah, 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 playing on this. And I was like, that doesn't look good. I think that's not very good. And so then as my children grew, and they're both young adults now, as they grew and I got to see our fixation, our addictions with our devices. And then Tony Fadell, who was the original founder of the iPod, and he was involved, a co-creator of the first 3 generations of the iPhone, talked about how these are intentionally made to be addictive. So that every time we get those alerts, those notifications, those dings, those sounds on our devices, that we're getting a dopamine hit. And the more we hear it, the more we feel that dopamine, the more we want to feel it. Interestingly enough, this was mind-blowing to me, Stephanie, was he talked about when you swipe down on the phone, it's mimicking that one-armed bandit at the casino. So they are intentionally addictive. And there's research studies coming out almost weekly talking about how the higher amounts of time on screen are leading to higher reporting of anxiety, stress, suicidal markers in our teenagers. It's really, I can get on a soapbox about this because it's so sad to me. So, I feel like even more, this is my mission, is to help people to A, understand this and maybe turn off some notifications, and B, share ways to calm anxiety, because it's possible. This is all born out of my journey with anxiety. Again, at this conference, they're talking about all these notifications, and I kind of sat there feeling a little embarrassed because I have a very different relationship with my phone. My phone makes one sound. It's a little Zen ding when I'm actually getting a phone call. Imagine that.
That's it. Okay.
Yes. So if we start to, I have a client who recently I I invited her, I shared this with her, and I invited her we started out with 7 days to turn off all the notifications. And she freaked. She couldn't handle it. Like, that was not going to happen. So then I invited her, all right, are you willing to explore this for 3 days? And the first day was really uncomfortable, but I said, hang in there. It's like when you take a pair of jeans out of the dryer and they're really tight when you first put it on. And then they start to ease up. You start to ease into it. And then she was like, wow, this isn't so bad.
You're saying that all of these notifications are, well, first of all, giving us a hit of dopamine, but secondly, are contributing to our sense of anxiety.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes. And it's certainly not the only thing, but it is such a huge contributor to our stress and anxiety these days, because those alerts, those dopamine hits, are actually sending cortisol into our bodies. Every time we get one of those hits, the cortisol, the danger, danger. So we're constantly scanning for danger 24/7. And it's like we've got our foot on the gas pedal, like flooring it, and we're never letting up. So that the further down this path we go, the weakened we are. So that, again, I'm going to date myself. When I was young, we had a blow up clown punching bag. And
yes.
you remember that?
I do. Yes.
The sand at the bottom, and then it's, filled with air, and you'd punch it and boom, it would go down, and then it would slowly come back up. Well, when we are living in this constant state of bombardment with our notifications, with, horrendous things in the news, it's like that, boom, and we get back up, and boom, we get back up. So my mission is to teach people how to wobble a little bit, just like we do in a physical yoga practice. Yoga is all about falling out of balance and bringing ourselves back in. So we don't just do that. Yoga is not just a physical practice. It is an emotional and a spiritual practice too.
You're using yoga, you're using meditation and mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And you also use hypnosis, which I think is very interesting. Can you explore that a little bit on the podcast?
Yes, because that of all the things that I introduce to people, that is the one that people have the most preconceptions about.
I'm sure.
Because of what you see on TV and the movies. Ooh,
yeah.
I would go when I don't have a physical office anymore. I work exclusively online. But when I had a local hypnosis practice for 10 years, I would go to the networking events in our town, and I'd walk in, and this one guy, every time I'd walk in, he'd go, "Oh, watch out. She's going to make you bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken." Because he didn't understand it, right? Yeah. But that's what we see on the TV and the movies. And hypnosis actually is a naturally occurring state that every one of us, every single person who's listening to this, experiences. It is simply a focused state of awareness, a focused state of attention. And isn't that what we're talking about with mindfulness, right? It's a focused state of awareness. So if you've ever been, driving somewhere, whether it's driving on a long highway or driving to work, and you get to your destination, you don't remember the drive. It's called highway hypnosis. And it's not like you weren't conked out. It's your subconscious mind, which is really the powerful part of your mind, was driving and keeping you safe, while your conscious mind, or how I like to call it, the monkey mind, was off thinking about something else. Our minds, if you think about it in terms of an iceberg, the part that you see above the surface, 5-10%, that represents our conscious mind. The 90 to 95% below the surface represents our subconscious mind. And that's where our power is. That's where we get into with hypnosis. We're able to get into the subconscious mind, which is where our power is and where we can make great changes. Albert Einstein said years ago that you cannot solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. Guess which part creates it? The conscious mind. So when we talk and talk and talk about the problem, it's not changing it.
Yeah, I noticed in your website that you were talking about changing your focus or changing your opinion, perhaps. And you were talking about being outside and on your your deck, and you had lovely things out there, flowers and wind chimes, and yet you kept focusing on the dogs barking next door, which is really very irritating. I understood that.
Right,
but
right.
but by you changing your focus to every time you taught about the dogs, you'd come back and say, no, look at the flowers, look at the birds, look at the wind chimes, until I assume you really taught your brain to kind of ignore the dogs and
Right.
really focus on the positive things that you were trying to achieve. How hard was that? Because it sounds kind of difficult to me.
I'm not going to say it's easy. Change, for the most part, you don't just go, oh, and everything's changed, right? It's like anything. We need to practice. And so, a beautiful quote that I have from Buddha, literally stuck to my computer, is always right here in front of me to remind me that what you think you become, what you feel you attract, what you imagine you create. And so, when I was focusing on these dogs, I was ruining my peace. I was giving my peace to some dogs. Again, I got a lot of this through my yoga practice and, deepening my practice in becoming a teacher and learning the yogic principles of, when we're having practice. The studio where I got certified, there was a karate studio above. And so there would be big banging, like you'd have the whole class banging on the floor. And some people would get really annoyed by that. And yet my wise mentor really helped me to understand that when I'm getting, oh, this is my yoga time and I need to quiet, and that's about me, that's not about them. And so, oh, okay, let it go. One thing, this is so simple, but like I literally, I'm in the process of writing a book. It's coming out soon. And I talk about these different ways. And this one is so simple, but it's simply saying return to sender and imagining that going back out away and then bringing my awareness back to the breath. Because then that gives me the peace and the freedom, which is what any of us really want anyway.
I like that. Return to sender. That makes sense to me. I can use that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. You're saying that you're working with and have worked with primarily women. Is that correct? Or are you also, okay. And that you're working with anxiety and that you use this variety of modalities to help people with anxiety. And I really like your approach because your examples are really simple and doable, I think. If you're really anxious, I think it's very hard to take on a whole thing of meditation. I mean, I've been doing meditation for years and years and years, and some days it works and some days it doesn't. And so it could be very upsetting to someone until they realize that that's just the natural way of meditation. So how do you go about saying, okay, this person A here has is very anxious, has anxiety. How do you choose which of your modalities to use?
Part of that is absolutely my intuition. It's I have this beautiful gift of just being able to know like where to go. So I don't ever go into a session having any expectations of I'm going to take this person to this. It's I show up and literally spirit guides me where we're going to go. And so again, we all experience life differently. We all experience anxiety differently. If I only had one tool to be able to help someone and it didn't resonate with them, then I would be failing them. Sometimes it doesn't happen very often anymore because I've been doing this for so long, but occasionally there would be a time when I would be when early on in my hypnosis practice, I had a structure to it. Okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And like one of the techniques that I use, it was actually the very first one that I learned, which helped me to say goodbye anxiety, hello freedom, and that's EFT tapping, emotional freedom techniques. And so I would start every session teaching a new client, this tapping. And occasionally somebody would be like, well, that's not working for me. And oh, okay, well, let's punt to something else.
Yeah.
But because I make it, it's never about me. It's always about how can I best serve this person in this moment.
Great. I like it's never about me. I think it's very hard. Well, that's kind of the essence of yoga though, isn't it? To get rid of the ego and just
Right.
serve. And that's pretty much what you're trying to probably are achieving also when you.
It's the same as Stephanie, when you're teaching a yoga class, it's never about you, is it?
No, no, it's not.
Right.
Well, hopefully some days you wonder, but no, it's not. It's about my students and what's best for them. And sometimes we change it mid pose, if things aren't going very well.
Right. And that's the hallmark of a wise teacher.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm really still trying to get this idea that somebody comes in. I'll be honest, I'm very anxious right now. I'm doing massive changes in my life and I want to do them. I think they're the right things to do. But as is normal, I'm very, very anxious. When you know it's a short-term kind of anxiety, which is basically what this should all fall into place within about hopefully 3 months or so, as opposed to someone who has been anxious all their lives, how do you work those healing modalities? What would be different about someone you felt was really in a short-term kind of position, as opposed to someone who really deals with this almost every day?
So there are differences and there are really not so many differences.
Yeah. Okay.
The whole like clarity that I have around this is that we need to build these resilience exercises into a daily routine. Because whether it's, oh, we're dealing with it in the moment like you are, and if you don't mind, in a moment, I'll share a couple of really quick little tools that you can use like right now, Stephanie. But whether you're dealing with something situational or it's ongoing, if you just, I love to talk about self-help, quote unquote, shelf-help. Because how many of us have bought books and programs and audios and da, 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 and then they go and sit on the shelf and we haven't made any changes. So, just like a musician has to practice again and again and again, or an athlete has to practice again and again and again, we need to practice these resilience exercises on a daily basis so that when life throws you a curveball, and it's going to, that, then you don't flattened like that clown balloon.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So really, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so just like in a yoga practice, when you are first like brand new into yoga, you're not going to go into the class that's going to have you go into Warrior 3 in the first 5 minutes. Like, not that that would be safe for anybody, but you're starting at the beginning and then you're building up. The first time I did tree pose, my leg wasn't up there, my foot wasn't up for very long, for sure. But now I can hold it longer because I've built up that capacity.
So basically, it's building capacity for resilience using these kinds of tools. So what kinds of tools are you talking about?
Okay, so real simple. I have a tennis ball in my hand because I keep it in my top drawer of my desk. I'm going to assume you don't have a tennis ball nearby, but do you have like a water ball?
Well, I do have a tennis ball, so that's okay. I use them in my yoga class. So
awesome.
Go ahead.
So grab it, Stephanie, and simply start passing it back and forth from left hand to right, from right hand to left.
Okay.
And back and forth, back and forth. And notice how you start to calm down. And listeners, as long as you're not driving, you probably don't have a tennis ball, but if you have a water bottle or your keys, or even just tap your hands from side to side, making sure that you cross that midline of the body. Because what happens is we're activating now both sides of the brain. And we're stimulating the parasympathetic or rest and digest system. Of when my son was graduating from high school, and I don't know why, I was really feeling anxious that day. And I had gotten to the football stadium early so I could get, great seats for us. And I, for some reason, had one of his lacrosse balls, which is a very hard ball, with me. And so I started back and forth, tossing it back and forth, and then thud, thud, thud as it went down the metal bleachers.
Oh,
So I don't recommend golf balls, lacrosse balls, your phone, but something soft and easy. And like, I am the queen of keeping it simple, sweetheart, KISS, because when it's simple like that, it's doable and, people can try it and say, all right, I think I can do this. Where if it's, all right, I'm going to ask you to do something for 20 minutes every day, chances are you're not going to do it. Like you just don't start there. But did you notice how that kind of, relaxed you?
it did. I'm amazed. That something that simple would do it, but it did. And I could just feel it, kind of the calm just coming down from the top and just going all the way down through the body. So a great tip. That's wonderful. I really appreciate that.
Good. Can I share another one that's even more simple than that?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yawn. Just yawn. When you yawn, whether it's intentional like that or when you just, unintentionally yawn. And so many times I see my clients yawning during our sessions and they're like, oh, embarrassed and trying to cover it up. And I'm like, no, yawn. Because when you yawn, you stimulate the vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in our body. It goes from our brain all the way down, wrapping around every single organ in our body. And so when we stimulate that vagus nerve, again, we're stimulating that parasympathetic nervous system. So if you are going in for a job interview and you're feeling anxious and nervous, before you go in, either cover your mouth as you yawn or go in the bathroom and just do a couple of really good yawns.
It's addictive. You start yawning and then you yawn all the time. I'm over here yawning away.
Well, that's not a bad addiction, though.
No, it's true. It's true. You mentioned in passing, and I haven't seen anything about it, about your book. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. I am so excited. It's Goodbye Anxiety, Hello Freedom, Building Resilience to Overcome Anxiety. And it is all my techniques. It's a very simple book because it's almost like a little smorgasbord. So because we don't experience anxiety, the same. You and I, Stephanie, don't have the exact same experience. 100 people, nobody's going to have the same experience. So again, going to that, here are all these different ways. Try them on, see what works for you. And I have in the book, it's, you can go to, like when I'm talking about a specific technique, maybe it's, go to this and I'll guide you through it and it'll be an audio or a video. So it's really giving a lot of different resources and stressing that you've got to do this on a daily basis because we don't get that resilience unless and until we actually build up that muscle.
I've got the title, Goodbye Anxiety, Hello Freedom. And you said it's not available right now, but it will be soon. Where could someone get it?
If they want to get more info, what I would encourage people to do is to download my free guide, the number 5 Easy Ways to Calm Anxiety, the number 5 Easy Ways to Calm Anxiety.com. And then you'll get my free guide. And it's got, 5 really easy ways like we just went through. And then I'll also send out the information about the book and the launch. I'm so excited about this. It's going to help so many people.
Given just the really simple things that you've done just on this podcast, I can certainly see that this would be a really important tool for people that are dealing with anxiety. Like I said, I am right now, but I know it's short term, so it's not all that overwhelming. It's just slightly irritating, to be honest.
Right. But even as you go through this process, Stephanie, if you did some of these techniques, the ones that I just shared with you, and if you want to get my download, if you do those, it'll help it not be so irritating. Yeah.
Because I get cranky when I'm irritated. So yes, no, that would be great. So I think this can be really helpful to people that are dealing with anxiety. Let me ask just one question. You say that people have to do this on a daily basis. And I understand that you have to kind of train yourself. Do you help them with setting up this habit? Because that's what it basically would be, is is a habit that you do it every day.
Correct. And when I'm working with clients, I'm definitely building in accountability. And if someone wants to just get my download and buddy up with someone else and be an accountability buddy, because most of us, I won't say everyone, but most of us, when we make a commitment to someone else, we will move heaven and earth to make sure we make that commitment. Yet we don't always do that for ourselves. We will make a commitment to ourselves. I don't know when this is going to air, but here we are recording it the third week of January. This is when the wheels fall off everybody's New Year's resolutions. So, right? Okay, there's no accountability. But when we make an accountability with someone else, like, you get my download and you say, hey, Sue, I'm struggling and I know you've been having a rough time. What if we make an accountability that every day we're going to check in and, hey, did you do this? Or how did that work for you? And, remember to breathe. Then you start building up the capacity, you build up that habit, and then it becomes a natural thing. But, habits, if you just do these things, this is the thing that I really want people to understand is, whether you get my download or you get my book or you just do the two things that we shared today, if you do it once and say, oh, that was really nice, and you put it on the self-help shelf help, then when you really need it, you're not going to remember it's there.
Yes, I can understand that. And those two things are so simple and so easy that it would be really helpful to have them in your toolkit, shall we say, so that when things do get anxious, you have something that you can do. And I really like this, this simplicity about what you're talking about the things that you are recommending, because I think they're so doable. And so much I love meditation, but I've been doing it for 20 years probably, and it's not easy. And it's not easy for me right now. It's easier than it was, but it's still not easy. And yet this yawning and the tennis ball, they're great. You can do that quite easily.
Well, and that's why, again, this is born out of my own journey with anxiety. I spent the good part of my life not even realizing that I was dealing with anxiety. And so over 20 years, I've been delving into this and finding what works for me and what works for my clients. And when we keep it simple, it's doable. I remember when the first time I was introduced to meditation and the teacher said, you have to empty your mind. Oh, I was off to the races. Like, whoa. Years and years later, I hear Sharon Salzberg, who, she is the ultimate face of meditation. She says, it's not about emptying your mind. It's about finding that 8 seconds of bliss. Whew, that felt so relieving to me. Like, oh, okay, I'm not doing this wrong.
Yeah, it's gotten a bad rap, I think, over the years. But yes, this is great. Those of you that might like to, you said you were doing things online, so almost anybody can contact you and work with you. Is that correct?
Yes, and I do work with men. I also work with children. I love working with children because children are just, first of all, they're so easy because they haven't learned so much that we have to unlearn as adults. And I do work with men, but I primarily focus on women because chances are you have a much higher probability that you will experience anxiety if you are a woman.
Oh, really? Why is that?
I forget what the statistics are. It'll be in my book. I forget what the statistics are, but it's like, I think you're 40% more likely to experience anxiety if you're a woman than if you're a man. It's just how we're wired.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, again, I focus primarily on women because I am one, and I completely understand it. But shortly after you and I get done with this, I have a man who I've been seeing, not continuously. It's been on and off for like 10 years. I haven't heard from him for a couple of years, and he reached out last week and said, hey, I need a tune-up, and I'm thrilled to work with him. Just because he's not a woman, I'm still thrilled because this is a man who understands that he's already accomplished so much in the healing work that we've done together. And, I'm a little off track. Let's have a tune up and get right back on track. That is like, to me, like, I just admire him so much for that.
Well, it also says a great deal about you, and that he knows that this is working for him, and he needs to. He probably doesn't feel quite right, and so he's coming back to you. I think that's a lovely affirmation, shall we say? Nah, I don't like affirmation, but a lovely way to say that you're doing a lovely job.
Thank
that
you.
you really are really helping him.
Thanks. I think it's because it's a partnership. I never look at it as, oh, look what I did for you. And for many years, I really focused because I want to empower my clients. For many years, I would make it all about them until I became wise enough to understand that it's not just them, it's not just me, it's us coming together as partners to help get them where they want to be. And oftentimes they don't know exactly where that is. They just know that I'm not happy with what's going on right now. Can we explore that?
If you'd like to connect with Stephanie, be you man, woman, or child, you can get her on her website, which is Stephanie Delfonzo, and I want to spell that for you. It's DALFONZO.com. Her email is sd@stephaniedelfonzo.com. And her Facebook is Stephanie Delfonzo. And she's got a Twitter, which is sdelfonzo. And her Instagram is, again, Stephanie Delfonzo. So,
here, huh?
Oh, somebody joined us.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Anybody that would like to talk to her, or as we talked earlier, who would like to get some free tips on how to help anxiety, can download from her website. Number 5, easyways-to-calm-anxiety.com. And she will also let you know when her book's available. So I think that sounds like a great thing to do to help with people who are experiencing anxiety. And I have a lot of sympathy for them right now. So yes. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Is there anything that you would like to add to tell our listeners before we close this podcast?
No, I would just encourage you to start where you are and give yourself permission to not have to be perfect. When you're experiencing anxiety, there's a lot of times when we're judging ourselves, that we shouldn't be feeling this way and what's wrong with me. So I would invite you to maybe be a little easier with yourself and just start with some of these simple ways. And when you notice, wow, I did that and I felt better, pat yourself on the back. Give yourself the credit of, wow, look what I did. Because as adults, so oftentimes we're looking for where we're not making the mark.
That's probably true. We're very hard on ourselves, aren't we?
Yes, we can be.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. I love the tips you've given us. I think those are really doable and easy to remember and easy to do. And from my own experience, they worked. So that's always important.
So much, Stephanie. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. And it was great to talk to you. So thanks so much.
Okay. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you for that wonderful interview. Please download and subscribe to the podcast on my website, which is www.yogalightness.com.au. To give a review of the podcast, you can go to iTunes, and the address is bit.ly/CTFOY, all in caps. And I would greatly appreciate your leaving a review of the podcast. If you would like to contact me, you can send an email to info@yogalightness.com.au. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Let me know your opinion on them through the review process on iTunes. And subscribe if you'd like to know when each new podcast comes out. Thank you again.